Welcome to Creepy, the best horror storyteller on YouTube.
The young boy, whose name was Michael, lived in a house with his mother and stepfather, John. John was a cruel and abusive man. He would often beat Michael and his mother. Michael was terrified of his stepfather and lived in constant fear. One day, Michael was playing in the backyard when John called him inside. Michael reluctantly went inside, knowing that he was probably in trouble. "Michael," John said, "I'm very disappointed in you. You've been a bad boy." "What did I do?" Michael asked. "You know what you did," John said. "Now, come with me." John led Michael to the basement. He opened the basement door and pushed Michael inside. "Stay down here until I tell you to come out," John said. John slammed the basement door shut and locked it. Michael was trapped. Michael stood in the darkness of the basement, terrified. He could hear John's footsteps walking away. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Michael was alone. Michael tried to find a way out of the basement, but all the doors and windows were locked. He was trapped. Michael started to cry. He was hungry, thirsty, and scared. He didn't know what to do. Michael spent the next few days in the basement, alone and scared. He ate the few scraps of food that he could find and drank the rusty water from the faucet. He tried to sleep, but he was too scared. Michael started to lose hope. He thought he would be trapped in the basement forever. But then Michael decided that he had to fight to survive. He started to explore the basement and look for a way out. He found an old toolbox and started to work on picking the lock on the basement door. Michael also started to gather food and water. He found a few old cans of food and a rusty faucet that still had water dripping from it. Michael knew that he had to escape from the basement soon. He couldn't survive much longer down there. He continued to work on picking the lock on the basement door. He knew that it was his only chance of escape. Michael worked on picking the lock on the basement door every day. It was a slow and difficult process, but he was determined to escape. One day, after several days of trying, Michael finally managed to pick the lock on the basement door. He was so happy and relieved. He had finally found a way out. Michael slowly opened the basement door and peered out into the hallway. He listened carefully to make sure that John was nowhere around. When he was sure that the coast was clear, Michael slipped out of the basement and ran into the house. Michael ran to his room and locked the door. He was finally safe. Michael knew that he couldn't stay in the house. John was too dangerous. He had to escape. Michael packed a small bag with some food, water, and clothes. He then snuck out of his room and out the back door. Michael ran into the woods behind his house. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew that he had to get away from John. Michael ran through the woods for hours. He was tired, hungry, and thirsty, but he didn't stop. He knew that John would be looking for him. Eventually, Michael came to a clearing in the woods. He saw a small house in the distance. Michael walked up to the house and knocked on the door. An old woman answered the door. "Can I help you, young man?" the old woman asked. "I'm lost," Michael said. Can I please come inside? The old woman hesitated for a moment, but then she nodded. Come in, she said. Michael entered the house and the old woman closed the door behind him. What is your name, young man? The old woman asked. My name is Michael, Michael said. It's nice to meet you, Michael, the old woman said. My name is Mary. Would you like something to eat and drink? Yes, please, Michael said. Mary led Michael to the kitchen and gave him some food and water. Michael ate and drank greedily. He was so hungry and thirsty. Thank you, Mary, Michael said. You're welcome, Michael, Mary said. Now, tell me what's going on. Why are you lost in the woods all alone? Michael told Mary about his stepfather and how he had locked him in the basement. He also told her about how he had escaped. Mary listened to Michael's story with sadness in her eyes. I'm so sorry to hear what you've been through, Michael, she said. You're safe now. You can stay here with me for as long as you need to. Michael was so grateful to Mary for her kindness. He knew that he was safe with her. Michael stayed with Mary for several weeks. He helped her with chores around the house and she told him stories about her life. Michael started to heal from the emotional and physical abuse that he had suffered at the hands of his stepfather. He began to feel like he was finally safe. One day, Michael was helping Mary in the garden when he saw a police car approaching the house. Michael's heart started to race. He was afraid that it was John. But when the police car stopped, Michael saw that it was a police officer that he knew from school. The police officer got out of his car and walked over to Michael. Michael, the police officer said, I'm so glad to see you. We've been looking for you all over. What happened? Michael asked. Your stepfather has been arrested, the police officer said. He's been charged with child abuse and endangerment. Michael was so relieved to hear that his stepfather had been arrested. He knew that he was finally safe. The police officer took Michael back to his mother's house. Michael was so happy to see his mother again. They hugged each other tightly. Michael's mother was so happy to have him back. She had been worried sick about him. Michael and his mother started a new life together. They moved to a new town and Michael started a new school. Michael was finally happy and safe. He had escaped from his abusive stepfather and he was starting a new life with his mother. Michael knew that he would never forget the time that he was locked in the basement, but he was also determined to put that experience behind him. He was going to focus on the future and build a good life for himself. Michael and his mother lived happily together for several years. Michael excelled in school and made many new friends. He was finally able to relax and be a normal kid. One day, Michael was walking home from school when he saw a man sitting on a bench. The man looked familiar to Michael, but he couldn't place him. Michael continued walking, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he knew the man. He turned around and looked back at the man. The man looked up at Michael and smiled. Michael's heart started to race. He recognized the man's smile. It was his stepfather, John. Michael froze in fear. He didn't know what to do. John stood up and walked towards Michael. Well, John said. If it isn't little Michael. Michael didn't say anything. He just stared at John in fear. What's the matter, Michael? John said. Don't you recognize your old stepfather? Michael still didn't say anything. You're not afraid of me, are you, Michael? John said. After all, I'm the one who locked you in the basement for all those years. Michael's eyes widened in fear. Don't worry, Michael, John said. I'm not going to hurt you. I just wanted to see you again. I wanted to see how you were doing. Michael took a step back. Don't be afraid, Michael, John said. Come here. Michael shook his head. Come here, I said, John said. John started to walk towards Michael. Michael turned and ran. Michael ran as fast as he could. He didn't dare look back. Michael ran until he reached his house. He burst through the door and ran to his room. He locked the door and hid under his bed. Michael's mother came home a few minutes later. She found Michael hiding under his bed. Michael, what's wrong? Michael's mother asked. He saw me, Michael said. He saw me and he's coming for me. Michael's mother knew who Michael was talking about. It's going to be okay, Michael, Michael's mother said. I'm going to protect you. Michael's mother called the police. The police came to the house and took Michael and his mother to the police station. Michael gave the police a statement about what had happened. The police issued a warrant for John's arrest. A few days later, the police arrested John. He was charged with stalking and harassment. John was convicted of stalking and harassment and sentenced to 1 year in jail. Michael and his mother were finally safe. They knew that John would be out of jail in a year, but they were determined to enjoy their freedom while they could. Michael and his mother moved to a new city and started a new life. Michael changed his name and his mother changed her social security number. Michael knew that he could never forget the time that he was locked in the basement by his stepfather, but he was also determined to put that experience behind him. He was going to focus on the future and build a good life for himself. Michael knew that he was a survivor. He had survived the abuse of his stepfather and he had escaped from the basement. He was strong and he was brave. Michael was determined to live a happy and fulfilling life.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more similar horror stories.